Yes.
That's my mom. Judith Saly. Born in Budapest, Hungary, 1921, August 21st. Passed away on January 21st, 2022. This is my mom and her grandmother to know back.
Wow.
At the age of about 3. Riding with little wooden hobby horse. This picture is my mom and perhaps a friend, our relative. I'm not really sure who this is. See, when you try to figure out who people are from old photographs, you have to be a bit of a detective. And if people passed away, my mother couldn't see much toward the end of her life anyway, so she wouldn't have been able to identify this person either. Okay, please. Oh, that's my mom was just a lady, Suzanne. My mom looks to be about 4 in that picture. Since mom had some sort of looks like a school play. There she is. You see her on the right. Looking down, yes. This is my favorite picture of her. On Venice Daniel at the age of 15. This is my mom had boundless faith in the Hungarian people. She grew up at a time when she had a lot of polemical childhood. And mom would always consider herself a Jewish Hungarian rather than a Hungarian Jew, because her primary identity growing up was Hungarian. That's why the betrayal of the Jewish people in Hungary was so bad, so rough for them. And all of a sudden, you don't live here anymore. You're not Hungarian anymore. Another picture of mom. So at some point, Hitler, his troops marched into Hungary. I think it was March 19th, 1944. The day after, mom, everybody had to wear a Jewish star in short order. My mom put a coat over, she went into an alley, she described it to me, put her coat over the Jewish star to go. He had false papers. So like that, she became another person. And that took a lot of courage. That was a capital crime. My mom got married to a man named Kuraryanchi, who actually offered to marry her the day he met her, to help her and her family. He was a Swedish citizen. They got married and eventually, to skip make the long story short, came to America on Kiwi 2. There's mom with her first husband, Kuraryanchi. On arriving in America, she found herself some Hungarian friends. This is my godmother, Adele Chambo, in the center, mom right. At left, I think, is her friend Monica, another Hungarian. Elegant ladies, right? 50s. This is mom with Eva Barakas at the extreme left. I think that's Barbara Dennis, perhaps.
Alan, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
The sound has been muted.
Okay, you guys can hear me now?
Yes,
No, they say I can hear it. All right, anyway, yeah, this is me with the quizzical up there. That's Camilla, and that's Marina, AKA Silver. We had another child, a child named Christy, who passed away, died young, very young at 3. But the 3 of us Saly kids did our thing. Now, Mom loves to swim. There she is swimming in Maine. We also love to be in Maine together. Okay, fast forward. Mom and my dad get married. My Pathwork died. There's Birdshaw on the right, and Keller. You could see the hands of Eva blessing my parents in their rings. This was a remarriage, of course. There's Mom in Maine, the house that we used to rent on Deer Isle. And now there's Mom giving a talk at the Center for the Living Force. She really hit her stride as a Pathwork helper and teacher. And I'll read you something quickly, which I think might come from that time. She says, I'm also the mother of 3 children, 16, 18, and 21, who are also on this path and with whom we have a very open, beautiful relationship. I feel very fulfilled in my life in all respects, and I attribute this solely to working on my lower self, letting go of my mask of perfection, and therefore living from the truth and love within. I still get angry and impatient. I still can feel not good enough or better than others. But I can live with my imperfect self and that of others. My goal is to bring into the world in a practical way and establish a new image. Just a couple more pics. This is Mom with daughter Aileen, my first daughter. And I think with Peggy and Bill, actually, this is in Washington. There's my parents, John and Judith Saly. Here's another picture of them at their at the house that we had at the Center for the Living Forest, Venetia, with my dad's little dog, Giggy. Giggy. Fast forward, this is a picture of my mom. She wrote a book called Grandma's Recipes Through the Generations. In this picture, we see Silver Krieger, my sister, Mom, and my daughter, Samantha. And they're cooking, they're baking Hungarian pastries. And I wanted to show you this clip. Mom was 100, 2021. Yeah. So that's the one capacity together. Now I want to let's see now. Stop the screen share. And I wanted to read one little essay that Mom wrote, because Mom was an excellent writer, a really first-class writer. And it's interesting because, you know, of course, growing up in Hungary in those days, if you were Jewish and a woman, you didn't have a lot of options. I could have and should have become a good writer. She wanted to be a doctor. She had to settle for becoming a nurse. That was her first job. All right, let me read a short essay about my mom and then turn this over to Camilla. Can you guys hear me online? Okay. Okay. All right. God by Judith Saly. I never imagined that I would become enlightened in this life, or achieve a state of unity or Buddhist equanimity. I did, however, hope that one day I would reach some inner peace, a sense of it's okay the way it is. I think I've approached that, though who knows how I will feel when the next big test comes. One of my favorite lectures is the God image. Since I had a very loving father who gave me a sense of full security as a child, and also a loving, warm mother in whose lap I got saved, it was easy to grow up feeling that there was a God in heaven who would always take care of me. I believe that I had a special relationship with God, as I had with my father. Only for a very short time when I was 15, did I think that there was no God, and when one dies, that's it. The biblical God puzzled me already when I was 5. A friend who was a year older came home from school and told me the story of Cain and Abel. This had such an effect on me that I still remember the exact location where this conversation took place. Why did God accept Abel's sacrifice and not Cain's? Or later, why did God harden Pharaoh's heart so that he did not let the Jews free? What was that about? Pharaoh wasn't really responsible. This God was weird. Nevertheless, the feeling that a loving God would always take care of me was firmly embedded in my heart, and indeed, he did take care of me. God or his angels protected me from immense dangers. The guide's teachings about God within, which is the modern spiritual message coming from everywhere, has posed a problem for me. Yes, the God, the higher self, that I relate to, but to pray to the God in me, I can't do that. I can align my God self to the highest spiritual reality I can conceive of, to a higher truth, to the loving consciousness energy that I do believe permeates the universe. I feel the presence of spirit and that of the Shekinah. These days, I have a lot of trouble believing in the fall and Christ's role in redeeming it. This is a myth, an attempt to explain the unexplainable, the origin of pain and suffering in this world. I can relate to the symbolic meaning of Christ's death and resurrection, but otherwise, that a loving Father would send his only begotten Son to earth to die an ignoble, horrible death, that otherwise humanity could not be saved from Satan's dominion. The Eastern religions don't have a myth of the fall, let alone original sin, which was St. Augustine's invention. They have other myths. We Westerners are par excellence thinkers, and we are uncomfortable whenever we don't understand something. Therefore, the doctrine that the cause of suffering originates in our having committed a sin of disobedience seemed to make sense and could be accepted, and was very useful to the hierarchies. The big guilt trip has served its purpose by now, as far as I'm concerned. More enlightening for me is the guide's explanation in Lecture 175, Consciousness, with a welcome reference to his earlier story of the fall, as having been meant symbolically, that all of us incarnated here on earth have at one time been spirits experimenting with creation, being godlike in our creativity, and fell away because of the fascination of being on our own. And in this way created pain by separating ourselves from the original state of union with God. Yet, as we fall away, we, as divine sparks, are also destined to bring light into the void. Interesting, paradoxical, a good subject for meditation. To me, by now, it doesn't matter if I don't understand anything. Creation is so vast and awesome. Just go to the Rose Science Center, what used to be called the Planetarium, in the Museum of Natural History in New York. See the space below. See the space shuttle at Gator. I've been on this path, trying to become more conscious and more loving. And I have made some progress in self-knowledge and in passion. Otherwise, apart from being deeply grateful for my life, for all the love I feel and receive, I know nothing, and I don't mind that. I don't need to know anymore. This is new for me, since I used to feel a burning desire to know why. What we do matters much more than what we believe. I don't believe that all's well, that everything is just as it should be. Perhaps, though, nothing could be otherwise than it is, because of cause and effect. That doesn't make the suffering of humankind less acute. It rather makes it more so, because we could choose to be kinder to one another. I read somewhere that the Bodhisattvas are always crying. I will never believe that the Holocaust served a higher purpose in some mysterious way. That would imply that it had to happen. No, it didn't. I do believe that the most noble pursuit is to alleviate the suffering that exists. And I wish I had the youth and the stamina I'm sorry, the youth and the stamina to do what, for instance, Doctors Without Borders do. Maybe some of them don't even believe in God. Maybe they're sexual humanists. Doesn't matter. Ultimately, love is what matters. And how we treat ourselves and others. I've come to accept myself as the flawed personality that I am. The merchandise as is. My prayer is Buddhist love and kindness meditation. It centers me and expands my mind and my heart. These days I feel good and mostly at peace, but that's easy because I'm not challenged. I pray that when I am, I can eat whatever it is with courage. I have had a very rich life. I did a few good enough deeds, but I also hurt people, and I wish I hadn't. All in all, I did what I could with whatever consciousness I had available, trying to fulfill some unsatisfied vow, survivor's guilt. Then I must prove myself worthy of having been spared. Okay. Oh yes, and Louise will play some melodies by Bartok, the great Hungarian composer, and then we're going to hear from Camille.
Very simple melodies that turn into really jazz.
Okay. Let's see something other than my chest. I'm not sure what this is, whether either of them, what they have to do with everyone online. Okay, thanks. Hello, everybody. Online and here in this room. When I was thinking about what I was going to say, I decided not to prepare a speech. But what I wanted to do is talk about what it was like to have my mother as a mother. So, getting this weird echo, so it's a little strange. But okay. Let's see. Is that better? No. Maybe my headphones. Okay. Okay. I want to say my mother was an incredibly forgiving and loving person. And I want to tell a story about when this is very distracting for me. I don't know how to do this. Is there a way to stop this echo? Huh?
If you want, I can take you through how to stop the echo. Do you want to pause and take a moment?
Well, maybe that's, no, it's pretty bad.
All you need to do is to stop the echo, all you need to do is turn down the sound on the computer you're looking at and any other computers in the room. So that, because what's happening is your voice is coming out of your computer.
Thanks. Yes. Thanks,
Better?
Kim.
Okay, sure.
Okay, much better. Thank you. Smart, of course. Okay, so anyway, let me tell you about what my mother said.
Let me just tell you one other thing, is that the other Alan Saly computer needs to mute because we are
the other Alan Saly computer needs to mute. Is there another one?
There's two Alan Salys and
just turn that
yes,
off.
you did it. Great. Now you're perfect.
Now I'm perfect. Okay, now I'm perfect. Okay. So my mother when I lost my virginity, I went to my mother and told her, and she said, well, we have to get you a diaphragm. What she said, no judgments, no criticism. She took me to her gynecologist and she got me a diaphragm. That's it. No discussion, no anything. You know, I'm so, was so aware of how so many people carry so much sexual guilt and shame. And I just didn't grow up with that at all. And a lot of that has to do, I think it has to do with both my parents, but I think it has a lot to do with my mother and how accepting she was. And when my father was angry because I was, you know, going out and having all these sexual adventures, my mother was the one who took him aside and said, John, you know, leave her alone, it's okay. And she's the one who said she can bring her boyfriends here. It's much better if the boyfriends come here, and they're not wherever, you know, teenagers would go. And that was my mother. So my mother, who I did not even recognize at the time, she was the person who was really looking out for me when I was a teenager. And I didn't even know, I didn't even appreciate, I guess, you know how it is. Teenagers are just, you know, they're so self-centered. But I'm so grateful to the kindness that she showed me in a difficult time. And it was difficult for them because I wasn't listening to them and I wasn't going to school and all that kind of stuff. And yet she was so loving about this incredibly important part of my life. And because of that, I think I have a really healthy and celebratory sexuality. So that's just one example. I'll give you another example. You know, I've been through a lot of things with my husband, who has had, you know, struggles with cancer, and luckily now he's doing quite well. So we're very happy, yay. But really shortly before my mom died, you know, things were very, very difficult. And I remember sitting by her bed when she was dying and crying about Mark. And she just took my hand and she was just stroking my hand, you know, that she was comforting me. You know, she was still my mother. She was still mama, you know, when I was crying, even though she was going through so much and she was transitioning and she was trying to let go. And that's just this overwhelming kindness. And she used to say, you know, when I said and I said many times to her, you are such a wonderful mother. And she would say, oh, I don't know, you know, but she really was. And I often say that I grew up New Age, like people grow up Catholic, you know, and those of you who are involved in the spiritual community that we were in for so long know that how dogmatic that sometimes was. And, you know, there were rules about how to behave and what to think and the ways to think about things. Could you turn that off? Is that my phone? Sorry about that, folks. We have great phone rings, I think you have to say. Anyway, so I don't even know what I was saying. What was I saying? Oh, that right. She thought that she wasn't such a great mother. And I said many times that she was a wonderful mother. And she thought, you know, I don't know. And I think it was also because, you know, there were some struggles with me, then with my sister, etc. But I grew up, you know, nobody is a perfect mother. Nobody is a perfect parent. When you think about and take into, you know, and you look at the life and that person and what she gave to her children, I mean, I can't imagine a better mother. You know, sure, she made mistakes, and, you know, in the Pathwork, there were mistakes about, you know, thinking that children are just little adults, and that's, you know, and we learned that that's not really how it works. You know, children need to develop an ego before you can break down the ego. But I really do not, I do not criticize or fault my parents for believing in some things. Almost every family has things that people believe in. And they also came to understand that a lot of what they believed, they continued to believe, but some things they changed and learned from their children. And I think my mother very much did that and was very, very welcoming and accepting of us. And so I think one of the things that I'll miss the most is my mom at Christmas time, how she really considered that time to be sacred. And I have this little bell, which was among all the things that I'm here to give away. But I think about how she rang that bell, and that sort of ushered in the spirit of Christmas, the sort of spiritual light coming into the darkness. And so maybe with the ringing of the bell, we can just take a moment to allow that light in. And I do feel that she was such a carrier of the light. And I think and I hope that I continue to do what she did in my own way, and that both my parents taught us to be carriers of the light. And I do feel that that's part of who I am and what I'm here on this earth to do. So I'm going to ring the bell, and maybe we can just let the light in.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Paul Redvani, and I'm a second cousin of Camilla.
Pull up the mic.
Okay. Better now?
Yeah.
Excellent. So Camilla will not remember, but I spent a Christmas with you when you were 3 years old. You were living in Tenafly, New Jersey, and I came for a visit. We are of Hungarian background, as you can testify, as I can suggest to you by my accent, which I never lost. Interesting family story in that I grew up in Hungary. Lydia's mother, Jolan, was a third grandmother to me and to my brother, who loved her dearly. I knew her husband, Janos, who didn't talk very much, but we were very, very good friends. My grandmother, who lived 5 minutes away from their home in Budapest, and we went there every week. She fed us very good things, which were a scarcity in Hungary in those days. There was a fair amount of hunger going on early 1950s. In 1956, Jolan, Lydia's mother, escaped from Hungary during the revolution, and we were on the same truck in direction of Austria. It was a spectacular escape, a stolen truck, false papers, fooling the Russians at the border with false documents that we are foreigners trapped in the country. It was a fantastic experience for me, who was 12 years old. From Vienna, the parents came to the United States, where they met the daughters, Lydia and Judith, and we went to Brazil. Tenafly, New Jersey was the first time that I saw Lydia at age 17. And the experience was remarkable to me in the sense that this was a bad time for the Saly family. Probably 2 years after the passing away tragically of a brother, Marina was just born. And my memories are that Lydia was simply exhausted, probably physically and also emotionally. There was a long day feeding the baby, changing. What did I say? Oh, no, never mind. Never mind. Judy. You can imagine diapers, cooking, children running around, and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, she finished, she sat down, she looked around, and she saw me. I passed a few days there with the Saly family. And she sat next to me. She probably noticed that, as many teenagers, I was seeking something and I didn't know what it was. And she talked to me very kindly. She gave me her time when she was exhausted. I've not seen that before, and that stayed with me ever since. In the early 70s, after I finished medical school, I came to the United States and I stayed here. And ever since that time, I visited Lydia with frequency. Every time I came to New York, I made a point, and we talked on the telephone. We talked increasingly more in Hungarian. She was growing older. Her friends and family who spoke Hungarian passed away. And there really was, my parents passed away. My father was one of the best friends of Lydia, of Judith. Then he passed away. So I was the last one left behind who remembered the old times of the family and who also spoke Hungarian. And she stuck very much to being a Hungarian, even though Hungary went through a lot of changes, the war, Hitler, communism, talk about Orban today. None of this speaks well of Hungary and never did. Yet she had a wonderful she had a wonderful childhood, and she writes about it. I just reread the recipe book that she wrote, which is worth reading. She's a wonderful writer. And she mentions how extraordinarily happy she was in Hungary. A lot of family, friends, and other things that she wrote about. There's too much to describe here. In my Camilla asked me to link somewhat the experience that I had with Judith to the concept of being a Hungarian. Interestingly, I lived only 10 years in Hungary. And if somebody asks me where I'm from, I often say Hungarian. And that there were formative years that were extraordinarily strong, and it's hard to define why. And Judith, of course, lived 22 years plus in Hungary. And she was as was said here, a Hungarian and before being Jewish. We talked, and it's hard to describe, this is now 60 years of conversations with Judy. We talked about a lot of things, mundane things, family, politics, etc. But increasingly, we're talking more about old times. She sensed that I was very interested, and she perhaps herself was very interested in talking about the old times. She knew everybody on the family tree. We have a family tree that we are working on with Camilla. And she would look at that, and or I would tell her because she couldn't see. And oh yes, I remember this person, and told the story. And gradually the family tree got alive. It were not just names and dates of birth and death. There were stories attached to each individual. And that was very nice. She spent her summers in a small town called Paks. The family tree goes back to Paks, where in 1848, one of our ancestors came from Russia as a soldier to fight against the 1848 revolution, and decided to stay. Many of the descendants remained in Paks, and we have some family members that survived that. Most of them died in the Holocaust. Those who moved to Budapest survived, with few exceptions. I told her about my experience to go to Paks, described my trying to find the Jewish cemetery, then finding actually the tombstone of our ancestors, including Joseph Steinberger, who I mentioned before. Mostly I talked about Agi, another cousin of Judith and my father's, who came along, who lived in that town, was taken away to Auschwitz and survived. And this was the first time she returned to the town where she lived, and it was obviously a very emotional time for her. Boy, Judith was an inspiration. I have to say she was one of the people with the greatest influence that I've known. We talked about something very interesting, and that was education. Hungarian education at the beginning of the century, especially among the Jews, was taken very seriously. It was perhaps related to the fact that you didn't want to be Jewish. You wanted to deserve respect for your ethical values and for your culture itself. And I know that Judith's mother carried that. She certainly did. We talked about music, we talked about Hungarian literature, which nobody knows because unfortunately it's not translated, but she had every single book. She gave me books to read. My father wanted to be a teacher, which couldn't be because he had to escape from Hungary as well. Judith told me the story that in Hungary, educators were taken very seriously. And a good high school teacher would have occasionally his name listed on a street. They were named after a good teacher. And that's, of course, not what we see today. Just the last thing, because I promised I was trying to be short here. By the way, talking about culture, I have to go back. Lydia, Judith's sister, once told me recited a poem that went for 10 minutes that she learned in school. Culture was taken very seriously. Just one last comment. After her 100th birthday, I called her. I was there, but I was curious to find out what was her experience about her birthday. And how did you like it? I said, well, boy, I liked it a lot. I love when people tell me they love me. And she smiled, and I did not tell her that I was one of those people, because I didn't have. And on that note, I want to thank you.
Hi, everyone. Is there anyone else from the family who'd like to say something? Or we can open it up to people on Zoom who'd like to talk about my mom and what they brief comments about her they'd like to share.
Here, anybody here.
Or anyone here? Yes. First people here. Yeah, Regan.
Hi, everybody. When was the essay written that you read?
To tell you the truth, I don't know, but I think it must have been in the 80s.
Okay, because it's interesting now. So first and foremost, I think Judith asked me to say to make sure that everyone understood the depth of her gratitude to her children. And especially in the last stages, she herself, I was graced by the generosity of her children to be allowed to be present with Judith in the closing chapter of Judith's life. And I want to tell you one thing from that I think you'll find pretty interesting. But during that time, the love that we all know Judith possessed, showed, and embodied entirely was present, at least in my experience, to the last moments. And she continually reminded me to remind everybody that her children allowed her to have the most gracious and peaceful death that she could have ever hoped for. And I was a part of a witness to it, and I want to say thank you to them for letting me and others to be part of that, but also so that we acknowledge, because it was extraordinary what it took to take care of Judith in her final days, even though she was really easy in most regards. One of the things that I got to do in the very end made me, and the only reason I'm speaking is because it relates to the essay that Alan wrote. Alan read, sorry, thank you. Judith and I had a frictionless relationship. It was a miracle in my life because it's truly the only relationship I've ever had that never had a bump. And so at the very end, about 3 days before she passed, she and I had a conversation, and I said, "It's us, Judith. Is there anything that you want to talk about that you haven't had a chance to talk about? Because as much as your children love you, you also worry about them." And she said, "Well, I'm a little worried about one thing." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "I'm worried that my children will continue to worry about me." And it's okay. And I said, "Can you tell them this?" And she said, "Oh no, I can't put my worries onto my children." And I said, "Well, is there anything else? These are the big moments. Judith, you got days left." And Judith knew this. She was not kidding herself about the fact that she was shortly leaving this mortal coil. And I said, "Are you ready to die?" And she said, "Well, yes, but not yet." And so I said, "So right, that's your mother." So, and then I said, "Do you have any questions about God left?" And, because we all had these kinds of questions, very much in the essay. And she said, "Does it matter?" And I said, "Well, it only matters if it matters to you. Does it matter to you?" And she said, "What it is, if there are hands of God, I'm in the hands of God. And if there aren't, I'm in the hands of my children." So even at the very end, she answered the question to her own essay written in the 80s, which was, who knows? Maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. Life is good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Regan. It reminds me of something my mom said. She said that when she was a little girl, there was a Hungarian peasant woman, and she asked her, "Does God exist?" And a Hungarian peasant woman said, "Well, for those who believe in him, he exists. And for those who don't, he does not." Which is kind of, the Hungarians have a way of saying paradoxical things, right? Anyone else who's here would like to say a word or two? Juan.
Hello, everyone here. Thank you, Alan, for putting this together and giving us the opportunity to be here. I think it's a very special occasion, really, to celebrate the life of such a great soul that I had never had the opportunity to meet, but I guess indirectly I met her through Alan, whom I am together with, on the path of, the path of Pathwork, and it's such an honor for me to be here, just to say a few words. Even though I never had the opportunity to meet this soul, I really feel that this was a very, very special soul, so great, as it usually is with the spiritual matters. We are just instruments in this world, and sometimes the spirit just projects through us, and we don't even realize. So I think this is the case in this, in Judith's life. I think she was such a great instrument of the spirit, because every time I read this lecture of Pathwork, and I love this Pathwork, I mean, this to me, this is the greatest path that I have encountered on this earth. I have always been a seeker of truth. And honestly speaking, I have never encountered greatest truth in this world that I find in this path. And, and every time, every every single paragraph that I read from any of these lectures, and at the end I see, Judith's name there. And I know editing is not an easy work to do. You really need to know what you are doing. And she and her husband, they went through the trouble and pain, to edit all these works so that we today can savor, so we can enjoy, so we can dig deep into this material and really find that truth that our souls so much crave. And I think, she made it so easy for us by editing this work. And to me, I mean, I have never, again, personally was fortunate enough to meet this soul. I am so grateful to her. And, to come to, to meet, having come to meet Alan, and now today I have met Camila. I see that, there were a great legacy that she left in these children, because Alan is such a great instrument, in this path, and just by sharing this lecture with us and being the leader of our group, and really giving us the opportunity to come into contact with this work, and really go there and appreciate the work that that Judith did by editing all this work, and which really did make it, or does make it, so much easier for us, those seekers of truth that are really digging into that unseen world where there's so much going on, and so far vast and beyond what our senses can hardly begin to comprehend. So I really have no word to express my gratitude to Judith, even though I have never met her. But I guess I have the opportunity to express it to you, Alan, as her son, and to Camila. I mean, you guys really don't know how fortunate you are for having been the children of this, such a great soul. I mean, I really see it that way. I mean, she really was, and such a great soul that her greatness, she herself did not even realize the great instrumentality that she was for the spirit, and the short time that she was on this planet. So I gratitude to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
To you, Camila, as well.
Well, 101 isn't that short. Does anyone else like to speak here? Shall we open up to some people on Zoom and have a few comments? I know I don't want to drag this out. Oh, Bruce Hampson is here. Hey, Bruce. Anyway, friends, is there anyone who would like to share something from cyberspace? Kim. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you a little bit.
Okay. I don't know if you can hear me in the space where you're at.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, I did not know Judith as well as many of the people who I see on the screen. I don't know who's in the room, but I'm imagining it's also true there. But it's an honor to be here. I'm so grateful for this gathering. And I did have some pivotal conversations with Judith. And I just want to tell a story, a little bit based on what the gentleman whose name I forget and whose relationship I forget. Should I talk louder? Would that be helpful?
You're fine.
Okay, great. The gentleman who traveled with them from Hungary, and he ended with talking about, I think it was Judith's sister reciting a 10-minute long prayer, a long poem. And I had many conversations with Judith about poetry. And when I was in the process of writing my book, if you've read my book, Judith is a character in my book. She talked about sitting at John's bedside, and what she did while she was sitting at John's bedside while he was dying was she learned a poem called One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. And I just would like to speak that poem. And invite her presence as I speak it, and also to say, this poem has everything that blew me away about Judith. It's a feisty poem. It's got a little bit of a snarky sense of humor in it, and it ends by going directly to the heart. And I had that experience with her so many times where her just factual truth telling was not always comfortable. And she wasn't afraid to say things, to me anyway. I've never experienced her in any circumstance afraid to say anything. My favorite image of her is one that I saw when I first joined the Pathwork, of a Pathwork, help me out, somebody knows this, like a Greek day or something, where she was dressed.
Egyptian pageant,
Say that again?
Egyptian pageant.
Yes, and she was dressed and in this top that completely exposed her breasts, with the shoulder straps and a beautiful gown, but her breasts were completely naked. And I just felt like this is a woman that's so out of the box. It's nothing I have ever experienced. And so in honor of that, Judith, I read this poem that is both funny, and I read it, it's both funny and direct to the heart. And I also read it in the awareness that this is what you chose to be with as you were losing John. It's called One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day. Accept the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster, places and names and places you meant to visit. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch. And look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities. I mean, imagine what Judith's thinking as she says this. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster. Some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I miss them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing is not too hard to master, though it may look like, say it, a disaster. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was beautiful. Thank you. And I really feel that really speaks to my mom. Gloria, would you like to say something?
I'd like to speak, Alan.
I'm sorry, who's that?
It's Donna.
Yeah, go ahead, Donna. Yes.
So it's a little bit hard for me to speak because losing Judith is a real emotional loss for me. You know, we had this very deep soul connection. And, you know, at first through Pathwork, I knew her as a teacher and a helper, and then we were colleagues, and then I was an apprentice in her class. And then in the last 20 years of or so of her life, we became really good friends. And she called me her culture buddy, and we would go to countless movies and concerts together and Chinese restaurants and countless times. I used to, I like to go to the movies by myself, and I like to see certain kinds of movies, and Judith liked the same kinds. So I just included her in my alone movies. And then, Judith was just a wonderful example to me of growing older with grace. Like then, her macular degeneration got worse and she could no longer go to the movies. So I would come over and we would go for a walk and sit on a park bench. And, she had this thing where we'd sit in front of Riverside Park and we weren't allowed to go back to her apartment until 3 people passed walking dogs that went into the park. If they didn't go into the park, it didn't count. And, so in the last years of her life, her greatest joy was listening to the radio. She loved classical music. She could no longer read. And she would listen to NPR and the Brian Lehrer show. Like, these were sacred times. Like, do not disturb her during those times. And I want to tell a story that, I'm so grateful to have been able to do something for Judith. So her very favorite show that was absolutely sacred, the rerun, and then something else with this guy. His name was David Duvall, and he had a show on the radio of the Piano Matters, and he was like a god to her because he was so erudite and he knew all the history and he could analyze the music and play all these different pianists. And something happened just serendipitously. It turned out that my cousin was a friend of David Duvall's. And after Judith's 100th birthday, I asked him if he would please ask David Duvall if he would be willing to come over to Judith's for lunch. Like, I would get people who could play the piano to come and play for her. I got at least 4 pianists I got and to come, and he had this Steinway upright that was not quite tuned, but good enough. And so amazingly, David Duvall called me up and agreed. So I told Judith I had another birthday present for her 100th birthday, but it was a surprise. And I was having somebody come over for lunch. And she thought it was going to be somebody who spoke Hungarian. But it was David Duvall. I went to West Side Market and got the lunch and had it all ready. And, he comes. And at this point, Judith was in a wheelchair. After she had fallen and broken her hip, she could no longer walk. She was in a wheelchair. And he comes in and I said, Judith, this is the mystery guest. This is David Duvall. And she said, no, really? And it was just a very magical thing. We had lunch. David Duvall held court and told his stories. Judith was enthralled. And he was thrilled too to meet somebody who was so cultured. Judith grew up going to the opera, knowing classical music, knowing poetry, knowing different languages, this totally cultured woman. And he was honored to be the esteemed guest of such a person. So after that, he said he was going to come again, and he never did. And he called me maybe a month after she died to say he was ready to come back again, but too late. But I just want to say, people have said before, I had no hiccup with Judith either, Regan. It was just a pure soul heart connection that will stay with me forever, and I miss her very much. Like, it's very rare, like, to be able to pick up the telephone and know that anytime you call, there's somebody who's just so happy to hear from you. And and she was always so loving, like Camilla. I also had the experience of in her, maybe it was the day before she died, or the day before, the last time I went, before I went and sat with the body, that she held my hand, and she could no longer speak at that point, but she was stroking my wrist in such a tender way, as if to say, you know, I'm okay, you know, and I love you. And you know, so I'll stop now, but you know, I'm just very grateful. I was not able to be there in person because I'm, you know, I'm, you know, dealing with a relapse of being sick. I'm just trying to get better. But I wouldn't have missed this for anything. You know, Judith Saly, Camilla once introduced me to someone we knew in common as her mother's best friend. And, you know, it's in some ways at the end of her life, we had that very special connection, and I'll be forever grateful.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Donna. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up in a little while. But if anyone wants to say some more words and keep it short, yeah, like 3 minutes. Yes, well, no, I can't. So I've been trying to do that, but for some reason I can't make everyone here, allow everyone here to see the images, except on the very top level there. But Ellen, is that you? Hold on, stand by. Unmute yourself. And also, Bruce, I want to hear from you. There's so many people that were so close to my mom, that kind of way. But yeah, like 3 minutes.
Very briefly,
Timer.
I was not close to Judith, though I have to tell you, I feel deeply enriched, not only by Alan and Camilla's sharing, but what you sent to us about the refrigerator that touched me so. And Kim, the poem was exquisite. I have the exact same vivid memory of Judith, who I saw as this very regal, elegant, you know, sometimes aristocratic woman at the Egyptian pageant, just blew me away. And that image is just forever emblazoned in me, saying, I do not know all this woman's dimensions. And Donna, also your sharing just enriches my spirit. So I thank both of you for letting me know the Judith Saly that I knew only slightly. So
Thank you.
this is the gift of a memorial service. What a blessing.
Thank you. Bruce Hampson.
Thank you. I met Judith when I first started the Pathwork, running around in circles in a room up on the west side, stamping and yelling, had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I'd come from my office, took my tie off, and I had to get dressed again or put the tie back on and comb my hair. So I'm in the bathroom combing my hair, and obviously it's taking too long. So my first awareness of Judith was her yelling at me, get the heck out of the bathroom. Other people need to do the same thing. I avoided seeing her for even being close to her for many years after that. I didn't want another punishment from her. And then gradually, and neither of us know how this happened, we came very close to each other. Judith was my son Chris' godmother at the baptism by the guide up at the center. Judith loved chocolate and flowers that smell very nice. So for 20 or 30 years, that's what she got from me on her birthday and at Christmas. Judith had a wonderful sense of humor. And I'm sure it's been said here before, the acuity of her mind never changed. The day before her 90th, Judith Smith and I had lunch with her up in her apartment. And one of her simple greatest joys was the dessert that we brought and stuck a candle in. And that's one of the things I remember about Judith. She had a joy in life. And she also had deep, deep caring. The day after Judith Smith and I had lunch with her, and my phone rang, and it was Judith. And she said, Bruce, I am so alarmed at the weight you have lost. Now, here's a woman at 100 years old with a few health issues. But her deep caring, she had to make a special phone call to express her concern. I miss Judith absolutely immensely. She was such a very, very significant part of my life. We would speak frequently on the phone, and I've heard it before here. When she heard my voice, she expressed such joy at being able to speak with me. So it's a sad day for me. One of the things that Judith did in the Pathwork was ask me to be Santa Claus at our center. And I did that for many years. That was one of the joys of my life. And Judith made that happen for me. Those are words. There's so many other things I could say about Judith. She was a mother to me, a godmother to my son, and a very, very deep, caring friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Jack Conaway. I'm just picking on moms. I mean, I don't need to neglect anyone, but you know, I know so many people, mom meant so much to mom. Jack, you're one of those people. Go ahead.
Well, and likewise. I just have been flooded with memories like many of you have. I mean, they just go on and on and on and on. But
you talk a little louder, Jack?
Yeah, I don't know what to say. Okay, it's like he was one of the best friends I've had in my whole life, and I guess for the last segment of our relationship, we spent a lot of time just having lunch at Mr. Henry's near her apartment. She could hardly see. She knew what the menu by heart, and she ordered by heart. And we just talked. And we talked about every subject under the earth. And it felt so warm. That's all I got to say. Thank you, Alan. And
thank you very much, Jack.
So, yeah.
Susan, did you say something yet? Yeah.
You mean you were talking to me, Alan?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Well, I want to say Judith was as much a mentor and friend to me as Eva. Judith had the experience of being a mother and the loss of a son. She was in touch with the pain and the challenges of motherhood in a way that guided me and helped me. While Eva was obviously my teacher in many ways, Judith was the one who had the life experience I needed to hear about. And her heart, her kindness. I called her, as you know, Alan, almost every Sunday for the last 2 years. And the quality of love that came through and concern and the caring, just pure kind caring was a help to me. So I love her. I loved her. After her death, I had this experience of these little sparkles in my bedroom. You know, as you know, my husband was ill at the time, and I just felt Judith coming to welcome him. And you even said that, like maybe the two of them are sparkling together in the spirit world. I think that's true. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. All right, 4 minutes. Does anyone feel moved to speak, my friends? Or shall we wrap it up? Yeah, go ahead, Marjorie. Yes, of course, another super close friend of our mom's.
Thanks, Alan. I was Judith's helper for, I don't know, some years. And I loved the time we spent together. It was a hard time for her. It was a time when she wasn't in touch with Marina. Marina had withdrawn from the family. And it was amazing being with her as she navigated her longing, her love for her family, for her children, and a willingness to just allow and to follow, and rather than pushing an agenda. And happily, there was a reunion some years later. But I love the way she engaged in life. It was very immediate, and it was across so many themes: poetry and music and theater, and tremendous excitement about and books, anything that she got involved with. So I thought she was quite an amazing woman. I remember I did a workshop in New York at some point. I think it may have been on end of life, but anyway, the theme of death was definitely there. And early on in the workshop, she had said, she was probably well into her 80s then. She said she was terrified of death and felt a lot of shame about that. And in the course of the workshop, something opened up where she saw beyond that, and she understood something about death, and everything. She said she saw the reality of life, and it was a big opening for her. I don't think she was able to sustain that vision, that profound experience, but she was very moved by it, as was everyone else who was gathered that day. So she was quite extraordinary. She was quite an extraordinary being, and I felt very like so many when I would call her. She would always, "Oh, Marjorie," and almost leap through the phone. Just so open and available and welcoming and warm, right up to the end. And of course, the work she did with the lectures was just a tremendous gift. Well, her whole contribution to the Pathwork was vast. So she was a great being and a great inspiration for many of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I guess we can wrap things up. Yes, I will.
Okay.
Here we are, me and Camilla.
Hey,
And
everybody.
Silver is living in Vermont now, and I'm sure she sends her love too.
Yeah, I want to talk
Definitely.
about my sister just for 2 seconds.
Go ahead.
Great.
I just want to say that my sister, who was the incredible caretaker for my mother in the last few years of her life. I mean, I don't know how we would have done it without my sister. She was just, I mean, words cannot even describe how grateful I feel, and we all feel, to how lovingly and carefully she took care of my mother. The reason she's not here, I don't know if she came on Zoom. She said she might. She has, her feelings about the Pathwork are, let's just say, not great. So she didn't want to kind of get up into that whole Pathwork thing. That's why she didn't come. She told my mother she wasn't going to come to this. She told her years ago. Like after Pathwork people, I'm not coming. You know, at the end of the day, that's fine, you know? My sister gave so much to my mother. She was such a great gift to come back to the family and be so loving to my mother. I just want to thank my sister, Silver, for being so wonderful and a wonderful caretaker of my mother. And I think we all feel that way. So
Thank you for sharing that. That's so important because I love Marina and missed her. And when somebody told, oh, it was Bruce who talked about how much that Judith loved chocolate and flowers, I thought of the exquisite wedding cake that Marina had concocted for the Path wedding for the Bratnicks and us, which is again just a vivid memory of her. And
she's still a great baker.
I bet.
Flowers' chocolate cake, it's still fabulous, and my sister still makes that. And so do I.
Wow.
So we're gonna do the song.
Want to?
Yes, we're gonna do the song. So Louise and I were gonna do a song that some of you might know. It was written by Lee Hoybe, who was in the Pathwork and is with a wonderful composer. This is called Where the Music Comes From.
Yay.
I do want the words. Maybe you can pass those out. Give me one too, Alan. Yeah, we'll need them. Are the words of the song in there? Okay. We're sorry, bear with us, folks. Who the people are that are on Zoom? Oh, geez. I'd have to look. Oh, gosh.
Some of us will remember the song.
Yes, I think you will.
Yeah, it'll come back. It'll come back. I know it will.
Oh, no. Sorry. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Yes. Sing it if you know. I didn't practice.
Can't hear it.
Where the clock stops, where it's now. I want to be where
Uh-oh, come here. Come here, little girl. Come, good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Such a good girl. Such a good girl.
here it's I want to
Come here, sweetheart.
I want to wait to here let it go. That is it. And don't
I want to walk in the earthly garden, far from cities, far from fear. I want to talk to the growing garden, to the neighbors, to the deer, to be one with the river flowing, breezes blowing, God is home, and all love to love.
Thank you, Mom. Thanks, everyone. All right, God bless.
Yes.
More if you can, and take things from my mom.